Now, I'm not sure, folks, when we started these interviews this morning, whether I did say where we're at. I'm not sure that I said that, but we're at the Beenleigh and District Historical Village, and we're in the old, what I call the old, but it's the restored Heck homestead. So it is my absolute honour today, and I'm really delighted to have them, but Bill and Pat Heck. But Bill, before we go back to the history of the Hecks, this must be like old home week, coming to the homestead here today and spending the morning here.
Yes, I put the first 25 years in this house.
That's right, yeah. So you'd feel right at home.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Isn't it lovely that it's been restored and it's here at the Beenleigh Historical Village for everyone to enjoy in the future?
Well, my father would be delighted.
As the population today are.
Yeah.
Can we wind it back though to, I imagine, your great-grandfather and grandmother, or great, they came out from Germany?
Yeah, great.
Can we wind it back to there and start there? And when
sure.
That goes back to the 1860s when they came out from Germany?
Yeah, that's correct.
And they settled locally here. I understand they didn't actually settle at Wingul, but they settled at Alberton in those days. Yeah. And did they ever say why they chose here or chose Alberton to settle, or did your father ever go through that exercise or that explanation?
Yeah, they did. The Alberton block was fairly small, and that didn't suit him to start off with. He was a baker,
gristmiller.
A gristmiller.
A gristmiller.
Yes. So
in other words, he crushed grain.
Okay, right. I was going to say, tell me a bit more. Keep going there, though. Right.
It was interesting because the first time we went to Germany, we stopped at the little village where they lived, and I was looking through the old church there, because over there the records are all kept by the church.
Yeah.
And a little old lady from over the road came over and said, "What are you looking for?" We said, "Oh, well, we were the Heck family that came over to Australia from here." "Oh," she said, "my father used to buy all of his flour from here to make his bread."
There you go.
So we had a connection straight away.
So they then moved from Alberton in those early days?
We're still full. Yeah, there was only a block of land.
And those early days weren't all about cane, though, was it?
No.
Cane wasn't, well, I'll say not even thought of in those days yet. It was
you're right.
Mixed farming.
It was mixed.
Yeah, they had a dairy and they grew vegetables, and the old fella couldn't. It was too restrictive for him.
You say the old fella. Is this your great-grandfather?
My great-grandfather.
Your great-grandfather, yep.
And he wanted something a little bit more.
Yep.
And as he grew older, his first son, Wilhelm Heinrich, he decided that he wanted to develop something a little bit more substantial, and he started to grow cane very primitively, and it was in fact
planted by hand and cut by hand, everything else by hand.
Yeah.
You can still see photos of those early days as far as cane is concerned. Just before we go any further with the cane industry though, like coming back to the mixed farming, there was a mixed farming, we're talking to
dairying
about dairying and the cream. The cream from,
Yes.
And the cream from here went to Kingston Butter Factory as well. Yep. Yeah. So it was the central, there's a butter factory, but desert in those days, but all around this area.
Went to Kingston, yeah.
And Pat, you mentioned too, arrowroot was a big, a lot of arrowroot.
Yes, arrowroot, and then of course cotton.
Yeah, cotton, yeah.
That was more over the river.
Yeah,
Yep.
Mount Cotton was named after that because that's where you grew a lot of cotton.
Yes.
I've just discovered that recently. I thought it just makes sense that it'd be called Mount Cotton if they grow cotton there, I suppose. But anyway, that never occurred.
That was during the Civil War in America when they couldn't get cotton.
The north-south.
They started growing over here.
The cotton wasn't being sent to England like it should have been. So
our previous guest this morning, Alan, talked a little bit about that time as well, because in the Civil War they were too busy fighting each other and not growing cotton.
Yeah, that's
and they
right.
needed cotton. So yeah. How was it sent to? Just occurred to me to ask. In the early, it was all baled obviously, and went to the wharf in Brisbane and shipped over there.
I got no idea.
Yeah, but then
I guess that's what happened. Yeah.
And I imagine ferry across the river even those early days, Pat.
yes, as I said, there were no roads. It was only Bill's aunts can tell when the old boys shifted from Alberton and went to Rocky Point,
Yeah,
which is up the hill, of course.
yeah.
That road at Rocky Point, the men used to work in the mill and cut samples, cut saplings.
Yep.
And the aunts used to fill it in and make the road so the buggies could go over.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah.
And I believe it's still underneath there somewhere.
So the early days of the cane industry down here, like you said, it was primitive, but that, if we look back from today and look back at any of those early days, it was all primitive, wasn't it? So, I mean, they worked damn hard.
It was interesting because during that time the government was building mills for local areas in
Queensland. Yeah.
and there was one down here at Nerang. Very nice mill. The government didn't spare the money, and they built this mill, and it went broke because they didn't have the right.
They didn't have the right varieties.
And the varieties used to frost and
we won't throw anything about the government running it, though.
Oh, no.
as government run things.
Keep going, Bill. I'm sorry.
The old fella went to an auction of the government mill.
Now, the old fella being your dad,
My grandfather.
still your grandfather, sorry.
And he went to the auction of the sugar mill at Nerang.
Yep.
And he bought the lot. And he, in fact, moved all of that sugar mill with a horse and wagon from Nerang to Winglewood, to Rocky Point.
Getting across the rivers would have been by ferry.
Well, it must have been somehow.
I think they got it by boat from there up to Descendants.
Oh, it could have been by boat.
Yeah.
So he bought the whole mill, and that's when the mill got established, where it still is today.
Yeah, that's right. Lots of people will disagree, but there's not any of the old mill left.
No.
So...
well, that's a long time. So what year was that then? About?
Early 1900s.
Yeah, because this homestead was built in 1914, wasn't it?
That's 14.
1914, yeah. So that's when it was first established. The other interesting thing I know in conversations we've had previously, this is your father, though. I think he had a desire to be a butcher.
No, uncle.
Your uncle?
Uncle, who married one of his aunts.
Yeah. He what?
He married, I said, one of his aunts.
One of Bill's aunts?
Yes.
Yeah, not one of his own aunts.
One of his
No, not one of his own.
One of Bill's aunts.
Yeah, that's okay. Because this then brings us to your childhood, I'll say, Bill. That I guess we've probably missed out a fair bit there. And you might like to add some more about the growing of the cane industry up until this time. I don't know, but the mill was then established.
Well, it was built in its present location at Winglewood. They in fact moved to Rocky Point first of all. Delightful little fishing spot.
Yep.
You've probably fished there yourself. Yep. And they stayed there for a while, and the women used to go out and with a wheelbarrow, and they cart the gravel up onto
the
mud. Yeah.
Onto the mud, yeah.
To make them.
But anyway, they didn't stay there for long, and he then moved down to the present location. So we're so boring, we're still there.
Yeah. Not in the homestead, because the homestead's here, but anyway, in your modern homestead now, yeah. So your uncle then, he had, with going back to the mixed farming, decided that he wanted to be a butcher and sell some of the pigs and calves, I suppose, I put it in those terms.
That's right.
And that whole, so no one ever came into the butcher shop, did they? No customers came.
It was all delivered.
All delivered, yeah. And you
Bill used to go delivering it, some of the beef.
During holidays.
Yeah. And that whole run used to go from Mount Cotton down to Oxenford. And
Something like that.
yeah. I was intrigued about how the orders would get to the butcher shop. Because it was there.
They take the order the week before.
The week before.
Yeah, so it was all established that way. Yeah, so it was just a week. Because you wouldn't ring up and put your order in.
No.
It wouldn't have been phones, would they? No. I've got to get the eras right. So yeah, interesting. And then growing up as a young fella, we won't ask you everything about those days, Bill, but in and around Beenleigh, I mean, what was it like around Beenleigh? I mean,
it was pretty primitive.
Yeah, well, the main road used to go right through the middle of Beenleigh in those days.
That was the main road. and there used to be bougainvilleas on either side of the road coming down City Road.
Yep.
Well, it wasn't your father, it was your uncle that had a butcher shop in one side, which is where Love a Coffee is.
Oh, yeah,
We
yeah.
shifted it from there up to where the bank got to be. And I actually worked in the 1960s.
In the bank.
And no, in the butcher shop.
Oh, in the butcher shop. I was going to say, 'cause, Pat, you're a nurse, so I didn't have you in the bank.
That's right.
So can I ask Pat directly, Bill, about the early nursing days then, Pat? Because I mean, that was your profession before you met this rascal.
Yep.
Yeah, and the early nursing days would have...
I did my general nursing at what was then the old General Hospital,
Yeah.
up the hill past the Dr. Pye's to the nurses' quarters where you stayed. And they had Ward 16 in those days, and I couldn't stand what they did in Ward 16, which was, I say a nut house, but it wasn't a nut house. Mentally disturbed, and they used to put electric shocks through them.
Yeah, I heard about
I
that.
went down to Matron Billy and I said, I'm sorry, I can't stay here. I just cannot put up with that sort of trouble. And she said, well, you have two ideas. You leave or you do night duty for 6 months. And I said, good, night duty for 6 months.
Yeah.
And in those days, we had 70 patients to a ward.
Yeah.
70.
I wouldn't dream of that.
And then,
No.
I mean, it was around, all the way around that, up the middle of the ward and out on the verandas. Yeah, shocking. But, we got over that. It did put me in a right mind for being able to cope in an emergency because we had to do various things with various patients over there and over there. Emergency.
Because you met Bill on a blind date. You've told me that.
No, what I done, I went to Melbourne and did med
She must have been blind.
and came back, and then I did well.
I'm not going to comment on that, Bill, at all.
And at that stage, I was living at Clayfield. And at Clayfield, I was a good Presbyterian and went to the Presbyterian church. And at the same church was his cousin, another good.
At the Presbyterian
At
church.
the Presbyterian church.
Oh, don't know about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we were great mates. And of course, she wanted to know. She wanted to go out. And in those days, you never asked a boy out. Not ever. So she said, but I really want to go with this guy out. And I said, well, if you find me somebody, I'll go out, because the guy I was going with had gone to New Guinea and he'd got him with the engineering department up there.
She must have been desperate.
So he came from
Yep.
here to Clayfield.
Yeah.
That was early in the night.
That was one of many. That was one of many nights, Pat.
Well, look what happened.
Look what happened.
My
That's it.
father, he was a doctor, and my father knew more about the area down here than I did, because one of his patients had a shop in Sandgate.
You remember the Lubacks?
Yeah, that's a good old.
Well, they were just down the
And of course, the Lubacks knew about the hex and all about the rest of the things. And they knew more about the place than I did.
So he gave me a check out first of all.
Oh, yeah. Well, you were.
Oh, well.
My father.
No
I
comment.
can't comment on that either. But anyway,
No comment.
Pat, your nursing career, though, you did share this with me the other day when we were talking. Your nursing career put you in good stead for the early days
Of here.
of here, looking after
When-
people, and one particular instance which I just find absorbing, if I can use that word,
Well,
if you don't mind sharing that.
Shortly after we were married, and one of the cane trucks that was on a farm across the road from where the house was, and the tram truck had run back on his leg and amputated one leg. And so I think, sterile tray. No, there's no sterile tray. So I get one of the good new sheets. I got a piece of elastic. I got a Woman's Weekly. Don't ask me why a Woman's Weekly, but that's a good ad for Woman's Weekly. And bandages. And I saved that guy's life. He went to hospital, and it was a PA hospital he was sent to.
Bound it up with cane sticks. didn't
He
you?
had cane sticks for splints on his legs. He had reams of cotton wool, of course, around for padding. He had elastic as a tourniquet. He had
And the lady
a woman's weekly for a splint for his arm.
the lady hasn't given back her sheet to her.
But we saved his life.
Yeah.
And I mean, the idea of, you know, somebody turning up, and of course at that stage of the game we only had one ambulance in Beenleigh. And
Norman Fletcher, wasn't it?
no,
And
I don't know about
it had a fat battery, didn't it, that day? Yeah.
a flat tyre. So of course that had to be pumped up. So we sent him from the mill up to Beenleigh while that one got his tyre fixed in the back of a station wagon with a mattress.
Mattress, yeah.
A mattress that you used to put on it. But the big thing was we saved his life.
Yeah, saved his life. Going back to the early days of Beenleigh, I mean, the highway used to go right through the middle of Beenleigh then.
Beenleigh,
Farrelly's Bakery.
Farrelly's, but
Yeah, all of those there. And the bridge, the highway was built though. The bridges, what year did the bridges get built? Like when did the ferries?
Well, we used to go to Brisbane across the Alberton Ferry. Remember when the Alberton Ferry?
Alberton Ferry, yes, yeah. That's the one the Raccos used to run.
That's right, yeah.
Yep.
And then
And that took you across to Mount Cotton or that area.
yeah, that's right.
Harbour.
So you really went through Carver to get to Brisbane.
Yeah. So,
but the roads were nothing. They really were nothing.
no.
But the whole idea of them coming, the mob coming out, was the fact that Pastor Houseman was in Beenleigh. And,
You and I are Lutheran by this stage, Pat.
well, yes.
Sorry.
That will do.
I just had to throw that in, I'm sorry. In closing, is there anything you'd like to add as far as like growing up, how the place has changed, anything like that? I mean, it's changed tremendously, but you're...
When I turned up at home, well, I did a sugar chemistry course at Queensland Technical College.
Right.
And when I came home, the district was all swamp and
Yeah, this is interesting.
yes, it was. It really wasn't suitable for anything much. And I spent 7 years
7 years.
of my early years trying to talk
We were married by
growers
this
into
stage.
trying to get the growers to get behind a drainage scheme to drain the area, to drain the swamps and get rid of the water. And unsuccessfully for 7 years. I don't know, I must have been crazy. However, the local growers decided they were going to have a celebration of 100 years growing cane in the area. And I thought, what a good idea, because my father was very good friends with the then Premier, Sir Joe Pielke-Peterson.
Yep.
And they both went to Lutheran Youth, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so I invited the old fella down to celebrate 100 years of growing cane in the area, and he was delighted to come down. So when I said, look, this place really isn't worth worrying about unless we drain it, because we've got very low country, we've got swamps, and we can't get rid of the water. So he immediately got onto the Department of Primary Industries and said, we want a drainage scheme at Wingoolba. Penmar Island was called in those days.
Yeah.
And that was how the drainage scheme started. Now it's extremely fertile
Yeah.
because it was low swampy country and very, very suitable for cultivation.
Yeah.
So, We've got a 300,000 tonne crop out there coming up for the next crushing season.
Yep.
And so we're probably pretty.
And 300,000 tonne crop. That's how many hectares is the industry still now?
It's about the same. Yeah, we at the height of the industry we had something like 200 cane farmers. Now we've got about 80, 70.
Yeah.
Needless to say, they've got bigger.
Yeah, the farms. Yeah.
Fences have all gone.
Yep.
Instead of having your little block and little block and little block, all the fences are gone, and now they just have harvested.
Yeah. It's all.
But we've got cane fires back again.
Yeah. Hell, that's all.
The cane fires used to be to get rid of the rats and snakes and cane toads. We must have done a pretty good job at that because we don't have that many. But now we had cane fires earlier this year, earlier last year, so wherever I am, because the cane was that thick and so big. Couldn't see where the harvesters could go. I mean, that's
now.
Bill and Pat, it's an absolute pleasure to have spoken to you this morning. Time is of the essence always, and we've always got to wrap these things up. We could probably grab a bottle of red wine or maybe 2 bottles of red wine, probably talk for the rest of the day. I can see you're nodding on that, and so would I. But unfortunately, we can't go on. I just simply want to say thank you very much for coming along this morning. What we're participating in, what we're calling shared stories. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and we can only wish you all the very, very best. Thanks, Bill. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, there you are.